Good morning. Today's daf is daf Tzadik Bet in Masech Chullin. We are near the top of Tzadik Bet Amud Aleph. Let me share my screen and we'll get started. We, whoops, did not share the screen in the right way. Let me try again. Here we go. Um, Yesterday, we concluded with the teaching of Rabbah, which understood the reference to Yaakov defeating Elohim and men, meaning that it was referring to sort of like judges, as really indicating that he would be the prince, that he would be the sort of ancestor of princes. That would be the head of Galut and the Nasi of Israel. That Elohim refers to judges, and so that's why it says that would indicate that Yaakov would have descendants who are leaders in Israel, and men. And men often in the Torah refers to great men, and so it's referring to the great men that would be the leaders of the Galut in Bavel. And so now, as we pick up with the last word on the 11th line of Tzadik Bet Amud Aleph, the Gemara provides another verse that hints to princely descendants. And so we're going to, go on a little bit of an aside for much of today's daf, but let's enjoy that aside. We'll dry the trip. So Uvegevin Shlosha Sarigim. Again, last word on the 12th line. It's right where the Dalet is, at least in the editions that have the Torah or Hashalem. And if it doesn't have the Torah or Hashalem, then it should say Bereshis Mem on the right-hand side, or on the left-hand side of the column, left-hand column of the daf. In any event, Ubegevin Shlosha Sarigim. So this is from Yosef's interpretation of dreams. That the Paro's butler says that his dream involved that on the grapevine there were three branches. As that's the word sarigim. So Amarav, Amar Chia Bar Abba Amarav. So Rav Chia says in the name of Rav that what were we talking about? Elu shlosha saregim. So take the word sarigim and break it down, and now it's saregim, princes of nations. So these are three princes of nations, Hayotzim Yisrael b'chol dor v'dor, that come from Israel in every generation. Pamim, sometimes Shishnaim Khan be'echad be'eretz Yisrael. Sometimes two would be in Bavel, here in Bavel, because that's what here is in the Babylonian Talmud, and sometimes one would be in Israel. Pamim Shishnaim be'eretz Yisrael be'echad Khan, and sometimes two would be in the land of Israel, and one would be here. So let's remember that ratio, that sometimes you have two of something in Eretz Yisrael and one of something in Bavel, because we're going to see that ratio in a little bit. So Yavinan Rabbanan Einayu Barabanan Barabana Ukva Barabana Nechemia B'nei Barate Derav. So the rabbis cast their eyes upon Rabbana Ukva and Rabbana Nechemia, the sons of the daughter of Rav. So, indicating that those were the two people that they were talking about. Okay, so Rava says, Elu Shlosha Saregoyim Shemalamdim Schus al Yisrael B'chol Dor V'Dor. No, it's not Saregoyim, it's Saregoyim, and it refers to non-Jewish ministering angels that argue on behalf of the Jewish people, indicating that even though there are 70 nations, usually at least 3%, three of them, so 5% of roughly 5% of nations will be supportive of the Jewish people in every generation. So if it feels like we're being very much persecuted by the nations of the world, we should remember that we're only supposed to have three in our corner, according to this prediction, arguably from the butler of Paro. So, and now we have a brisa that gives more interpretations, three more interpretations of these words about on the grapevine were three branches. In fact, we're going to end up with a total of 8, I believe. Let me just check to see. 3, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, 8 different interpretations. So let's see what interpretation number 3 is. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Gefen Zeholam. that when it comes to the grapes, that's a grapevine rather, that's the world. Shlosha Sarigim, the three branches, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, that refers to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Vehi kiforachas alsa nitza. And the pasuk that continues and says, and it was as though it were blossoming. Its embryonic fruit came forth. Elu ha'imot. That refers to the matriarchs, to the four matriarchs. Hivshilu ashkeloseha anavim. And then the puzzle continues, its clusters ripened into grapes. Elu hashvatim. That's the tribes, the 12 tribes. So Amrullah Rabbi Yoshua says to Rabbi Eliezer, I don't think your interpretation is correct because v'chim mar'in lo la'adam mashahaya. Why would the butler have a dream about some things that have already happened? Meaning, at the time of the dream, there were 12 tribes. There were 4 emot. There were 3 avot. So none of this is really telling us something new. Usually the dreams are about the future. The dreams are supposed to be about what's going to happen. Ella, so as a result, Rabbi Yeshua offers a different explanation. Explanation number 4 for the pasuk, for the words Geffen uvegeffen shlosha sarigim. Ella Geffen zed Torah. Geffen refers to the Torah, which had not yet been given at that time. Shlosha sarigim elu Moshe v'Aaron and Miriam. The 3 branches are Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, who would lead the Jewish people in the wilderness. V'hi kiforachas alsa nitza, and when it refers to things that were blossoming and its embryonic fruit came forth, Elu Sanhedrin, that was the Sanhedrin that would be established. Hivshilu ashkelosah anavim, and then its clusters ripened into grapes. Elu atzadikim shebechol dor v'dor, that's the righteous people in every generation. So that is interpretation number 4. Amar Rabbi Gamliel says, Adayin tzrichen anu l'modai. We still need the opinion of the modai, Rabbi Lazar HaModai, and to mokim le kule b'chad makom, because he actually, unlike this most recent interpretation, where there was a little bit here and a little bit there, he centralizes all of the interpretation in order to put it all in one place. Geven ze Yerushalayim. The Geffen is, the grapevine is Yerushalayim. Shlosha Sarigim ze Mikdash Melech Mikdash Melech v'Kohen Gadol. The 3 branches are the Beis Hamikdash itself, the king of the Jewish people, and the Kohen Gadol. V'hi kifaragas also nitza, and the fact that it's brought as though it were blossoming and it brought out baby fruit, embryonic fruit. Elu pirchei kuna. That's the young Kohanim who are working in the Beis Hamikdash. Hivshilu ashkelosah anavim, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Elu nisachim. Those are the wine libations. And so as a result, what Rabbi Lazar was that nobody else had done so far is to put it all within Yerushalayim, to say that everything is talking about the same location. Okay, so that's 5 interpretations. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Mokim Lava Matanos. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that it's about the gifts that Hashem has given to the Jewish people. Da'amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Geffen zed Torah. That when it says Geffen, it's referring to the Torah. That's one gift that Hashem gave us. Shlosha Sarigim zeb be'er amud anan uman. The 3 branches, that refers to the well and the cloud of glory and the man that fell, the food that was falling from the heavens to feed the Jewish people in the wilderness. V'hikafo ragas also nitza elu abikurim. And when we talk about the blossoming and little fruit, that's referring to the bikurim that the Jewish people would be able to offer in Eretz Yisrael when they took over the land. Hivshilu ashkelosah anavim elu nisachim. And then when we talk about ripened into grapes, it's talking about the wine libations. And so as a result, all of these are wonderful gifts that Hashem has given to us to enable us to enjoy. And so as a result, that's what it's referring to. Rabbi Yirmiyah offers the 7th interpretation. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar, Geffen Elu Yisrael. The grapevine refers to the Jewish people. V'chein hu Amar, and he gives a proof text that it means that, because Geffen Mimitzrayim Tasiya. that you caused a grapevine to journey out of Egypt. So obviously, Hashem did not actually have a grapevine journey out of Egypt. Well, who journeyed out of Egypt? It was the Jewish people, and so that shows that the term grapevine refers to the Jewish people. Shlosha sarigin elu shlosha regalim she Yisrael olin behen b'chol shanav v'shana, and then the three branches refers to the holidays, to Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, for which the Jewish people go up to Yerushalayim every year. V'hikafo rachas. And then it was as if it was blossoming. What is that referring to? Higias manan shel Yisrael lifrot v'lirbot. And so it's an indication that the time has come for the Jewish people to be fruitful and multiply, and God willing, Kain Yirbu. V'chein hu omer, and that's what it says. Uvnei Yisrael paru v'yishritzu. Right, that it was going to again. This is the pasuk of the that the butler was describing in his dream, and so the dream had obviously it had the personal meaning to him that Yosef interpreted it, but it also has a meaning for the Jewish people, meaning that right now, as you Jewish people are entering the land of Egypt, because the Jewish people were shortly going to enter the land of Egypt in connection with the famine that brought, and Yosef was going to save them. So that would result in them being multiplied. And that's exactly what happened, as we saw in the beginning of Sefer Shmos. Also Nitza, and then not only that, but we had embryonic fruit come out. Very small grapes would come out initially. Higiyazman Am Shel Yisrael Ligael. That's the indication that there's going to be a time for the Jewish people to be redeemed. V'cheinu Omer, V'yaz Nitzcham, right? Nitza and Nitzcham seem to be very similar words. Al Begadai, V'chol Malbushai Egalti. That their lifeblood, their nitzcham, that's referring to the lifeblood. And so as a result, spurted out on my garments, and all my garments became soiled. And this is a reference to Hashem is, in this analogy, a warrior returning from Edom. And God explains that he took care of the Edomites, and as a result, that's an indication. So similarly, he took care of the Egyptians and enabled us to come out. And so Egalti can be a play on Geula, on redemption. So Hivshilu Ashkelosah Anavim. And then back into the pasuk that where the butler is describing his dream. So its clusters ripened into grapes. Higias manashel Yisrael lishtos kos hatar ela. Eventually, the time will come for Egypt to drink the cup of wrath. Now, it's not completely clear whether that's referring to the Exodus itself or some future time. But in any event, the point is that God willing, those who are wicked to the Jewish people will eventually see their punishment. Behind Adama Rava, and that's what and this is all consistent with Rava's comment. Shlosha kosos hamuros b'mitzrayim lama. Why did when the butler tells over his dream, he refers to the word cup 3 separate times. It says, and Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I placed the cup on Pharaoh's palm. So the point is, it didn't need to reference it 3 times. It could have just referenced it once and gotten away with it. So Echad Sheshasav Moshe. So one alludes to the wrath that Hashem rained down on the Egyptians at the time of Moshe. But Echad Sheshasav Mei Paro Necho. Once was during the time of Paro Necho. That's the time of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel. So he defeated Egypt during the time of Paro Necho. And one refers to the future time that they will be punished with all of the people who are wicked, all idolaters who are wicked to the Jewish people. So Amrle Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. So Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba is the author of this of the 7th interpretation, and so Rabbi Abba tells what looks like his son, Chidarish lehu Rav lahani karai ba'agadita. When Rav would teach these homiletically, kivasach darish lehu. He used to teach it exactly as you said. So your interpretation is a really good one. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish offers an 8th and final interpretation. Umazo kegefen nimshala. The Jewish people is like a grapevine. That is consistent with Rabbi Yirmiyah's interpretation. Zmorot sheba elu bali batim. The branches or the three branches. Those are the how people who are in relatively wealthy householders, meaning that they own their houses. As Rashi tells us, if we take a look at Rashi, it's right opposite the second to last narrow line in the Gemara. Zemoros Sheba Elu Bali Batim. Dama Hazmura Hazu Motzi'ah Lulav Tama Hazmura Hazu Motzi'ah Lulavim Ve'etzim Ve'olim Upri. That these branches, that given the fact that these branches are going to bring out, they are going to cause stalks, leaves, and fruit to come out. So Vehu Ikar Geffen. And so these branches are core to what the grapevine is all about. Kach Bali Batim. So too, the people who are relatively wealthy among the Jewish people. Gomle Chesed. They provide the kindness. Umachzikin Yedei Adniyim. And they support the hands of those who are poor. Umifazrim Mamonim L'malchus. And they pay their taxes and pay the government. Bishvil Acheim, on behalf of their brothers, so that the government can support their brothers. Umiskaimim Al Yadam. And they are supported through these people who are more wealthy. And so, to the extent that you ever feel bad that maybe you're not doing all that you can, you have to the extent that you pay your taxes and you support the people who are poor in your community. So you're part of this Bali Batim. They're the core element, according to Reish Lakish, of what it means to be part of the community. And then, what about the rest of the branches that were referenced in the pasuk? Ashkolos, Sheba, the clusters in it, Elu Talmidei Chachamim. So if you actually have nice grapes, those are of course the Talmid Chacham, the people whose Torah stuck scholars. Alin Sheba, the leaves, Elu Amei Haaretz, the leaves, which are helpful in ensuring that the sunlight gets to enables the vines to grow. So that's referring to the Jewish people in general, even the people who don't have the ability to do tzedakah, because the Jewish people in general all work together. Kanoknos Sheba, if you talk about the kanoknos, which are sort of defined here as tendrils, but the bottom line is they're like the shoots. Elu Reikanim Shiv Israel, those are the empty people in the Jewish people, meaning the people who have no mitzvot. Obviously, there must be doing sins. V'hainu d'shalchem mitam, and that about those people, it's or in connection with all of this. This is the message that was sent from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. Liboy rachamim iskalaya al olya. Dilmalia alya lo miskaimen iskalaya. That the clusters, meaning the righteous people, need to pray for mercy for the leaves, namely the unlearned people, the Amei Haaretz, because without the Amei Haaretz, without those leaves, lo miskaimen iskali, the clusters wouldn't be able to survive. And so that is the message of the grapevine. So Reish Lakish sort of takes as a basis that the Jewish people can be compared to an entire grapevine. So depending on which part you want to be, that will determine what you are. If you want to be the grapes, well, then you got to be a Talmid Chacham. If you want to be the shoots that are, the branches that are, supporting the entire structure, well, then you should make sure to support the poor and support the people who are studying Torah, etc. Okay. So that brings us now, the initial interpretation of the three branches, which is why we got onto this in the first place, was the fact that it mentions that sometimes there are two princes in Israel and one prince in Bavel, and sometimes it's the other way around. Well, now we have another teaching that involves a division of righteous people between Bavel and Eretz Yisrael, and it's based on the same proportions. So let's take a look and we will see. So the pasuk that we're going to cite is from Hosea, Perek Gimel, pasuk Bet, and it says ve'ekreha li b'chamisha asar kasa. And the context, so that kara, we're going to interpret what that means, but it's a kara. We'll see that it means to buy. In this case, I buy myself for 15 pieces of silver, and the pasuk continues, and a chomer of barley and a lesech of barley. So we'll see exactly. We're going to again homiletically interpret this verse. So Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yotzadak. So how do we interpret this verse? Ein kira el lashon mechira. Kira and mechira, the kaf and resh of the ekkoreha is referring to mechira of selling. Shene'amar b'kivrei asher kariti li, in the grave that I acquired for myself. This is part of the language of Yosef telling over to Paro what his father Yaakov had told him about the fact that he wants to be buried in Egypt. I'm sorry, in Eretz Yisrael, in the Ma'arat HaMachpelah. So that is the reference. So the point is that he bought for 15 silver pieces. And so let's see what it is that is talking about. So, b'chamisha asar, what is it that happened with 15? Zechamisha asar b'nisan, shabon nigalu Yisrael mitzrayim. This refers to, meaning that Hashem bought through the 15th of Nisan, through the concept that that God took out the Jewish people from Egypt. That's effectively how God acquired the Jewish people. So kasaf, the silver, elu tzadikim, that is the righteous people, meaning the righteous people are the mechanism for Hashem's continued ownership of the Jewish people. V'chein hu omer tzur hakesef lakach biyado. That this refers to Hashem's removal of the righteous people before the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. This is a pasuk in Mishlei, Perek Zayin, pasuk Kaf. And it says that he's taken the bundle of silver in his hand. And again, it homiletically refers to the Hashem's removal of the righteous people. And so again, silver refers to righteous people. Chomer sa'orim v'lesach sa'orim. What's the story with the reference to the chomer of barley and the lesach of barley? What is all of that about? Elu arba'im v'chamisha tzadikim sha'ol miskayim bahem. These are the 45 righteous people in whose merit the world exists. And how do you get to 45? Well, Rashi helps us out. So if we take a look at Rashi, it's from the bottom of the Rashis. It's about 14 lines up. Last word on the line is chomer. Chomer shloshim sa'in. A chomer is 30 sa. So that's how you get 30. Lesach tesvav sa. And a lesach is half of that. And so that's 15. And so 30 plus 15 is 45. And so that's how we get to 45 righteous people. And I can't tell based on this verse alone whether there are 30 in Bavel and 15 in Eretz Yisrael, or whether there are 30 in Eretz Yisrael and 15 here. However, when the next pasuk says, when it says in Zechariah, Perek Yud Aleph, pasuk Yud Gimel, so not in this next pasuk, but it says elsewhere in Tanakh, Keshu Omer be'ekha shloshim hakesef va'ashlichoto beis Hashem el hayotzer, that I took, and it's referring to Zechariah as the one speaking, I took 30 pieces of silver and I threw it into the temple of Hashem, to El Hayotzer, to the treasurer. So Havei Omer Shloshim be'Eretz Yisrael v'chamisha asar kan. So it shows that there were 30 in Israel and 15 in Bavel, because if there are 30 in Eretz Yisrael, so then it must mean that the other 15 are in Bavel. So Amar Abaye says, V'rubayu mishtachche b'veikanishta detute afta, that if you want to find where are most of the 30 that are in Eretz Yisrael, they are going to be found in the Beit Knesset that is under the connected room. So what in the world does that mean? So Rashi helps us out. The Rubayu to Tzadikah to Eretz Yisrael. First of all, when we say majority, what are we talking about? We're referring to the majority of the righteous people of in Eretz Yisrael. And what does it mean that they're sort of under this attached chamber? The idea is that an attached chamber is a relatively unimportant piece of the house. And so as a result, these are particular people that go to a synagogue that is not meant to be like a major synagogue. It's sort of a minor synagogue, and you wouldn't have thought that the most important righteous people would be there. But it's telling us that if you want to find the righteous people, go to the least likely locations. Those are where you're going to find them because those people are likely to be modest and righteous. Okay, v'ainu dichsiv, and along those lines, that tells us we have the pasuk that says va'omar aleim im tov beinichem havu schari v'im lo chadalu v'yishkalu eschari shloshim kasef. And along these lines, we're going to see that the 30 silver that's referenced, so if it's proper in your eyes, give me my fee. And if not, so then hold back. And so they weighed my fee, 30 pieces of silver. So again, this is this is a verse in, this is the previous verse in Zechariah, Parak Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Bet. And what is it talking about? So Rav Yehuda Omer, Rav Yehuda says, Elu shloshim tzadikim umos ha'olam, she'umos ha'olam iskaimim aleihem. These 30 pieces of silver, again, the silver is indicating righteous people. These are the righteous people among the nations of the world, and in their merit, the nations of the world continue to exist. Ula Amar, Elu shloshim mitzvos, shloshim mitzvos shekiblu aleim b'nei Noach. No, it's not referring to 30 righteous people. There may not even be 30 righteous people. But rather, these are the 30 mitzvot that the people of Bnei Noach accepted on themselves, meaning the non-Jews. Ve'ein mekaymen ela shlosha, but they actually only keep 3 of them. Achas, and what are they? This is a relatively famous line in the Gemara. She'ein kosen ksuva lizcharim, that they don't have marriage contracts for their, illicit relations with men and men. V'achas she'ein shoklin basar hames b'makulin, and they don't sell the meat of dead. And Rashi tells us basar mate shel adam. They don't tell it that the human flesh. They don't sell human flesh in the marketplace, even though maybe they engage in cannibalism. They don't make a big deal out of it. And finally, they honor the Torah. And so those are the 3 things that the non-Jews continue to do. And so as a result, it is based on that they are able to continue to survive. Okay, well, we finally now get back to the halachot of Gid Hanasha after our nice travels through Agada associated with the concept, all based on the idea that there are princes in Eretz Yisrael and princes in Bavel that are Jewish, and we based on that, we then talked about the righteous people in Bavel and righteous people in Eretz Yisrael, and had a number of lessons associated with the fact that silver can be a reference to righteous people. So, but in any event, let's get back to Gid Hanasha, and our pasuk said, "Ve'eno noheg ba'of," that there is no practice of Gid Hanasha when it comes to birds. And the implication is that the bird does not have the necessary flesh where it would have that kind of gid, that kind of sinew. So Valka Chazina de Islay, but 1 second, we do see birds that have some flesh on their thigh. And so as a result, maybe we should have them. De Islay, as Rashi says, de Islay, top of the narrow lines of Rashi on Tzadik Bedamabet, de Islay kaf basar svivot hakolit ha'elyona. They have some flesh around the upper bone, the thigh upper bone in their legs. So, Gemara explains, Islay below eagle. They do have, but it doesn't go all the way around. Meaning, take a look at the next Rashi, below agil, habasar svivos ha'etzem, ve'enu dom elakaf. As a result, it's not like the spoon, quote unquote, of the thigh of a larger animal, where but rather it's only a partial covering of the thigh bone with flesh, and that's why we don't have the practice of we don't have the practice of the Gid Hanasha with respect to birds. And Rashi, continuing on in that Rashi, on the third line, last word on the line in the narrow lines of Rashi on the top of Tzadik Bet Bet, Kol Basar Gavoa Agul Kari Kaf, that the word kaf of the spoon, quote unquote, is a reference to where there is flesh all the way around. Kida Amrin Benida it's a part of the indication of the fact of whether a woman has matured sufficiently. So that's the concept there. But the bottom line is that the flesh around the thigh is the flesh that we're talking about, and when it doesn't have it, so then it can't. We're not going to have the law of Gid Hanosha with respect to birds. So by Rabbi Yirmiyah asked the question, well, Islay la'ofa agil. What happens if a bird does have all of that flesh? Maybe it's just a fat and muscular bird. So Islay the behema below agil. Or what happens if there's an animal that doesn't have the flesh, that flesh all the way around? My Basar Didei Azlina, do we follow that particular animal? Or Basar Minei Azlina, do we follow that particular species of animal? So Teku, it's unresolved, and so as a result, if you we would not want to eat the chicken or the flesh of a bird that was that had this, and we would not want to, and similarly, we would still want to avoid any gid of a larger animal, of a behema, even if it did not have the flesh that went all the way around. The Noah Bishlil, we say that the Gid Hanosha's prohibition applies to the fetus. Amr Shmuel, the Chalbo mutter l'divrei kol. But although the Gid Hanosha inside of a fetus is going to be prohibited, even after you shech the mother, and so the entire fetus is now considered kosher animal, it's still going to be prohibited to have that. And so what's the story there? Meaning, and so Shmuel then says that although the Gid Hanosha is prohibited, the fat is permitted. Now, what chalev is it referring to? That's the Gemara's next question. Which chalev is it talking about? If you're talking about the chalev that is the non-kosher fat that within the fetus. So, but there's an argument about it. How could Shmuel say that everybody says it's permitted? Titania, we have a brisa, noeg bishlil, that when the Gid Hanosha applies to the fetus. The chelbo asur, divri Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says that the chalev of the fetus is prohibited. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Eino Noeg B'Shlil. Rabbi Yehuda says that the Gid Hanosha does not apply to a fetus. The chelbo mutar, and the chalev is mutar. So as a result, we see that there's a machlokus both about the Gid Hanosha and with respect to the chalev. So how can can't be that when Shmuel says that the chalev is permitted according to everybody, that's just not true. And Rabbi Lazar explained in the name of Rabbi Yoshia that this machlokas, this dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, is about a 9-month-old fetus that was born, that was found alive inside its mother. Rabbi Meir l'shita so, and Rabbi Meir is following his reasoning that it's basically considered like a regular animal, and it's not as if it was already slaughtered. But Rabbi Yehuda l'shita so, and Rabbi Yehuda follows his opinion that it's not an ordinary animal, and it's considered as if it was a fetus inside its mother, and so therefore it's already been shechted. And so just as they disagree with respect to the chalev, they disagree with respect to the Gid Hanosha. So again, we see that Shmuel can't be saying that we're talking about the chalev because that is a disagreement area. So Ella chelbo to Gid. All right, so maybe it's talking about not the chalev fat that we all said that is referred to as chalev when it's referred to as non-kosher fat, but rather it's talking about the fat that's associated, that's around the Gid Hanosha. And so then, but if you want to say that, but we also have a disagreement about the fat that's around the Gid Hanosha. Titania, because we have another brisa, Gid Hanosha, when it talks about when you're going to remove the gid anasha, mechated acharab b'chol makom shu. You have to dig after it wherever it is. Meaning, you have to try and get out everything. V'chotek shamno, and you have to cut out its fat, and that's the key line for us. Mi'ikaro, from its root. So Rashi explains, what does it mean, mi'ikaro? It's 1, 2, 3 from the top of the narrow lines of Rashi. It's 17 lines down. Mi'ikaro mikol makom shehu nivla v'nishrish babasar. You have to root out the fat that's associated with the gid hanasha from every place where it has been absorbed and it has taken root in the meat. And so that's what you need to do. So, and whereas, and again, Divrei Rebbe Meir, that's the opinion of Rebbe Meir. So Rebbe Meir says that all the fat is prohibited. Whereas Rebbe Yehuda Omer, Gomamo Ima Shofi. No, you don't have to remove all the fat because it's not all prohibited. Rather, just level it out so that you don't, so that it's not, doesn't look like you haven't taken the entire gid anasha. As Rashi tells us, next Rashi and Rashi, so that was now 18 lines down. Gomo ima shofi hachalev hagavoa. So you have to when you smooth out the rounded flesh, what it means is you take the raised fat, the nira al hashofi that appears on the rounded flesh. Ahashofi and gomamo. You cut it off, you smooth it out, umashlicho, and you throw it away. Mimnei maris hayin, because we're worried about appearances. Shelo yirek ka'ochel gid, because we don't want it to look like you're eating the gid anasha. And if you were to eat this part that is resting on the flesh, people will think, oh, that's still the gid anasha. Aval ikaro b'sharasho shel shuman. But when it comes to the roots of the fat, v'shel gid, and of the gid anasha itself, mutarin. You don't need to throw it all away. It's actually permitted. And so we see that even when it comes to the chelev of the gid anasha, the fat that's around the gid anasha, there is a machlokas. So how can Shmuel say, our moment is at the moment, how can Shmuel say that the chalev is permitted according to everybody? We see that there's no way, there's no area in which everybody agrees that it's permitted. No, so actually, yes, they do agree. Even though it looks like Rebbe Meir and Rebbe Yehuda disagree, really they agree. La'olam chelbo degid. We're talking about the fat of the gid anasha. Umoda Shmuel, the Rebbe Meir midrabanan aser. And what Shmuel is saying is that Rebbe Meir would agree that according to that it's prohibited rabbinically. Meaning the point is that biblically Rebbe Yehuda and Rebbe Meir agree that it is permitted, and it's only Rebbe Meir saying that it's prohibited rabbinically. And so that's why this Gemara, that's why the Brisa says that Rebbe Meir says that it's prohibited and you need to cut it out from its root. But really, from a biblical standpoint, it would be kosher to eat. Titania, and you know what? We have a proof for this because listen to the following Brisa: V'shamno mutar. The fat is actually permitted, but the Yisrael kedoshim nagu bo iser. But the Jewish people who are holy, they have the custom of treating it as forbidden. So my lab, Rabbi Meir, isn't this Rabbi Meir, Damar mutar minator va'azar midrabanan, that it's permitted biblically but prohibited rabbinically? So as a result, that supports the idea that we said that really when Shmuel made his statement, it's according to the Torah, and everybody agrees that according to the Torah, the fat is permitted, and it's only rabbinically that Rebbe Meir says that it's prohibited. So no, not necessarily. Maybe umimai dilma Rebbe Yehudi. Maybe it's Rebbe Yehuda. Maybe the machlokes between Rebbe Meir and Rebbe Yehuda is about whether it's biblically prohibited. And really, Rebbe Yehuda would agree with Rebbe Meir that rabbinically it's also prohibited, meaning in the practical sense, Rebbe Yehuda would say, even Rebbe Yehuda would say you can't eat it. Aval Rebbe Meir midoraisa nami aser. And really, according to Rebbe Meir, it's even prohibited biblically. So, no, lo salkadaitik. Don't think that. Titania, because we have another brisa. Gid Anasha. When it comes to the Gid Anasha, Mechatit Achra B'chol Makom Shu, you have to dig after wherever it is. Vishamno Mutar. And its fat is permitted. So man shamat le to islay chatita. Well, 1 second. Who says that you have to dig in order to get out the Gid Anasha? That was Rabbi Meir. So v'ka'amar shamno mutar. And yet this brisa says that is the fat is permitted. And so as a result, we have concluded our discussion, and Shmuel's statement stands that when the Mishnah says it's chaylev is permitted, it's according to everyone, because that statement is according to the Torah. Although Rabbi Meir would disagree, and he would say, yes, it is permitted according to the Torah, but rabbinically it is prohibited. And so that is the discussion, and so that is the conclusion on that point. Now, during the course of this discussion, we touched on what precisely is included in the prohibition of the Gid Anasha. Specifically, does it include also the fat that's around it? So here we have the core element of this discussion. So Amar Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta Amar Rav. So we have Rav's opinion, and that is Lo Asr Torah Ela Kinoknot Shabo. That when it comes to what the Torah prohibited, it was actually only the Kinoknot. And Rashi tells us Kinoknot Gidin Dukin. It refers to the thinner sinews. Ha'holchin ba'orech hayerach, that go along the thigh, mitachat basar, underneath the flesh. Magid hachitzon, that legid hapnimi, that connect the outer sinew and the inner sinew. Ve'hein ha'asurin, and that is what actually is the Gid Anasha that is prohibited. Lefi she'hein rakin, because they are soft. V'nosnin tam, and they are edible. They will give a taste to food. Aval Gid atzmo. But when it comes to the Gid itself, shehu berosh hashofi, which is at the top of the rounded part of the flesh, kasher, that is hard. Kashehu, that's hard. Ve'etz ba'almahu, and it's just like eating wood. And the point is, it's not considered food, and therefore, notwithstanding the Torah's language about the Gid Anasha being prohibited, what it's referring to is actually the softer sinews that are offshoots from the Gid Anasha, and not the Gid Anasha itself. Ula Amar, Ulas disagrees, and he says Eitu. No, you're right that the Gid Anasha is wood and sort of effectively inedible, but by Torah, Chtiva alav, but the Torah says you're liable for doing it. And so as a result, even though it might not be edible, right? So take a look at Rashi. Next Rashi, we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lines up from the bottom of Rashi on Tzadik Bet Amud Bet. Ula Amar, Afa Pisha Eitzu, even though it's like wood, HaTorah Chayva alav, the Torah makes you liable for eating it. So Amar Abaye Kivase de Ula Mistabra. It makes more sense to say like Ula. De Amar of Sheshes, Amar of Asi, because it was said in the name of Rav Asi by Rav Sheshes, Chutin Shebechelev Asurin Be'ein Chayivin Alehen. That when it comes to the threads, through to the strands of the chaylev, they are prohibited. And we're talking about now the chaylev that is around the Gid Hanasha. It's prohibited, but one is not liable for kares to eat them. So Alma chaylev amarachmana v'lo chutin. So we see that when it comes to the prohibition, I'm sorry, this is referring to chaylev. This is referring to the prohibition of chaylev. When the Torah says chaylev, it's referring to the chaylev itself and not the strands that are associated with it. So Hachanami, Gid Amarachmana, below Kanoknos. So when it says that the Gid is prohibited, it's not referring to the offshoots. And so as a result, that's consistent with what Ula said and not with what was said in the name of Rav. So Gufa, let's take a look at this statement. Amar of Sheshes, Amar of Asi, Chutin Shebechelev Asurin Ve'ein Chayavin Alehen, that when it comes to this is a statement by Rav Sheshes in the name of Rav Asi that we just cited, that when it comes to the strands that are from the chaylev, you're not going to be liable. Shebekulya asurin, and not only that, but the strands of the chaylev that are in the kidney are going to that are also prohibited. Ve'ein chayavin aleihen, and but you're not going to be liable. So lovin kulya. This is referring to the white fat that is on the kidney. Rebbe Chia. They actually had a disagreement about it. Chad asar v'chad shari. One said it was permitted, and one said that it was prohibited. Rabba mimartate. Rabba mimartate lay. Rabba would root out, would try and cut out all of it, even the fat that was inside the kidney. Rabbi Yochanan memarte, Rabbi Yochanan would lay, he would also cut it all out. Rabbi Yasi Gaim lay, but Rabbi Yasi would just level it off, meaning he would not eat the part that's outside the kidney, but he would eat the part that's inside the kidney. So Amar Abaye, Kavasi to Rabbi Asi, Mistabra. It actually makes more sense like Rabbi Asi, just as he said that it makes more sense like Ula. Rabbi Abaye comes and tells us who it makes more sense as well. Why does it make more sense like Rabbi Asi? Amar Rabbi Abba, Amar Rab, Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, because it's all said in the name of Shmuel. Chalev Habasar Chofa Oso Mutar. The chalev that is covered by meat is permitted, meaning the only thing that's going to be prohibited is when it's on the outside. Alma sha'al haksalim, Amar Rahmana. It's the chalev that is on the flank, on the meat, that is going to be prohibited. V'lo shebetoch haksalim, but you don't have to root it all out. So hakanami sha'al haklayos Amar Rahmana v'lo shebetoch haklayos. So again, just similarly with respect to the kidneys, it's the meat fat that is on the kidneys that is prohibited, and not the fat that is in the kidneys. Okay, and so now the Gemara is going to evaluate Rabbi Abba's statement in the name of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. But for that discussion, you'll have to stay tuned for tomorrow's daf. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful day. Looking forward to continuing our learning together. Next week, I am away. So I will, God willing, post Wednesday's shiur. Probably it won't get posted until sometime on Wednesday because I'll record it beforehand. But Thursday and Friday, we will post shiurim by Rabbi Linzer. Looking forward to continuing our learning together next week.